Fire Radio.
Good morning, Chief Lieb, thank you. What a great presentation. I appreciate you leaving me a few minutes. Thank you. No, it's all good. What a great and strong, powerful message. And this morning for myself, excuse me, I'm going to piggyback right on top of that. Training, education, knowing your job. If you know your job, inherently safety is built in. And that's the message. And I'm so glad that Chief Lieb went down that road this morning. I want to start off with this slide. Every presentation I do, I start off with my Aloha slide. August 8th, 2023, where the fires that swept through Lahaina in the island of Maui in Hawaii. A month after the fires occurred, myself and my producer went to the island on an invitation from the fire department and the emergency management director there. And we spent a week on the ground amongst the rubble, did 22 interviews in 7 days. I spoke with politicians, people that lost everything, spoke to first-in engine companies, talked to the saltiest, oldest, most senior firefighter on the job, to the first and youngest probie on the job. We captured the stories of what the true firestorm looked like in Maui. And what I was impressed upon being there was the spirit of the people. The Hawaiian spirit captured me. It changed me. The way they spoke about their order and the way that life is. The Hawaiian culture parallels the American Fire Service hand in hand. It's about order, it's about construct, it's about mutual respect, understanding your place, and being valued. And that's very much what the Fire Service stands for. It always has. And the Hawaiian culture piggybacked on that, and I just loved it. And it was an amazing time, and I was able to tell some really triumphant stories, some stories of terror, sadness. But overall, for me, it was a moment that changed my career within 30 years of the Fire Service. This was a moment for me, especially in the world of National Fire Radio. This changed me. And now with everything that's happening in California, I have a real appreciation for what they're going through. And Chief Lieb touched on it earlier when he first started. A lot of misinformation, a lot of things that people are not aware about. But what we have to do is focus on the triumph that's happening there, the dedication and sacrifice of those firefighters that are there, putting themselves out there every single day. And so I always start with this as a reminder for me to stay grounded, stay humble, and to stay in love with the fire service and love humanity. This is important for me. Family's everything. That's my daughter, 16 years old, just joined the volunteer fire service a year ago with me in my volunteer house. Below is my father, my two brothers, myself, and again, my daughter, Lily. We're a family of firefighters. Grew up in the fire service. I was that kid that chased the fire trucks on my bicycle at a very young age. I loved it. I love everything about the fire service, and it's important to share with family. I'm going to speed through a couple slides because I want to make sure I have enough time. What is National Fire Radio? A lot of people probably are not familiar, so let me educate you real quick. National Fire Radio, and now the National Fire Radio Media Group, is a channel of protecting the integrity of the job. 7 years ago, I found that the job was starting to miss. I found people leaving the fire service, career, volunteer, paid on call, it doesn't matter. People were leaving the fire service pissed off and disgruntled. There was a disconnect. There was a miscommunication. The administration was wronging them. They weren't connecting well with the new generation. People were leaving the job, and when they leave the job, after 20 years of a highlighted service and the last few years got clouded, they leave on a bad note. And they take everything that they've learned, their experience, their knowledge, their pedigree goes out the door with them. We, as a fire service, cannot allow that to happen. And so for myself, National Fire Radio started as a podcast. It started as a podcast to capture the stories of the senior man, capturing the stories of culture and tradition, their experience, paying it forward. Super important things that we need to make sure that we can continue pushing the fire service forward. And so that's what National Fire Radio stands for. And from that, we became a social media platform as well, supporting the podcast. But what I learned very quickly was the fire service was missing. The innovation of the fire service is slow, and I'm going to get into that as the program moves on. What we need to do is understand where the attention is today and how to deliver the right information on the channels of which people are paying attention. And so that's social media. Now, many of you, a lot of the old timers believe that social media is the downfall of the fire service. The cell phone ruined the kitchen table. I take the counter. I will tell you that we can use it as a tool, as an instrument, a way to promote this job. It's not going away. The job is always evolving and changing. Are we willing to evolve and change with it, or are we going to draw a hard line in the sand? If we draw that hard line in the sand, we will fail. We need to innovate. We need to move forward. That's the big part of what this is all about. And so for me, National Fire Radio has become a conversation. We capture the spirit of the fire service, protecting the integrity of the job. We build brand. We work with manufacturers. I have many manufacturers here today that we do partnered projects with. Media, marketing. We've gotten into a whole realm of opportunities that we use within the fire service. The one thing that I did learn real quick, though, is when you start something like this with the podcast and now with social media and putting myself out there and taking positions and willing to put my face to what I say, take ownership of the information I put out. Authenticity, no embellishment, no BS. Firefighters smell it from a mile away. I will tell you my faults. I will tell you what I do wrong. I will tell you what I think I do okay at. Full transparency, super important. And the one thing that we've been able to do is build community. I believe community within the fire service is one of the most important things. I was talking with Eric just before we came up today. Community is important to him. Seeing that out in the breezeway where the vendors are set up. Watching this group build community, the relationships between command and administration staffs, from technicians to firefighters, to the vendors, the manufacturers, the OEMs. Creating a community is how we push this job forward. It's exciting to see a conference like this and learn about what's growing. 150 last year, 450 this year. This is an organization that is doubling down on its mission, and it's working. We saw it firsthand last night. Bravo to you guys, by the way. The job. I'm going to jump into the meat of this, the job. I talk about the job. I'm a volunteer firefighter, 30 years. Had opportunities to be a career fireman. I chose to go on a different path. I stayed with a family business that provided very well for my family and for myself. And so as I watched a lot of the guys throughout my volunteer career graduate to go career, we have firefighters from my hometown and fire departments across the country. Some of the biggest and brightest names, biggest and best departments, if you will. I'm very proud of that. I'm the guy that stayed home because I went in a different direction. But my passion and love for the fire service doesn't change because I'm a volunteer. Doesn't matter. The job doesn't matter. We all do the job. Fire doesn't care who you are and where you come from. So the job, when I talk about the job today, it's just the job. Understanding the fire service. I think I wanted to start with this slide today because I think it's really important to understand, especially with a group and an organization like this. The fire service, we typically paint a broad stroke about what the fire service is. When we go to implement or talk about change or we talk about initiatives, we have to be careful and understand who your audience is. We go from very, very rural, truly neighbors helping neighbors, to the most affluent or put together or dialed in departments. Super important to understand that the fire service is not a broad category. It is a narrow and niche market depending on who you're talking to. That means that the content and delivery of the message needs to be unique to the people that we're targeting. Super simple, right? We all know this, obviously, but I put this up here as a reminder. The smallest town to the biggest city, the people know that we're coming. Unconditionally, there's an unconditional trust in what firefighters do. We don't get to have a bad day. If we do, one of us needs to pick the other up. We need to perform at moment's notice. That is what we do. It is unconditional and a blind trust by the public we serve. So we do not get to falter. We do not get to perform. We have to be there for the people. Fire hurts and kills, we know we must be prepared. My favorite thing here is safety comes from knowing your job. Expectations and understandings of the profession from which you choose to be a part of. The better we are and the more dialed in we are, the better we become, the safer it is. Like Chief Lieb talked about, training and education. Double down on your training. I'm going to talk about that. Knowing your job, education and training, give them the tools to learn the job. We today have longer probie classes. We give more training. We give more everything. It's so well-rounded, our training today, that it's almost like firefighting is a second part of the training because we're more worried about filling and checking the boxes. Class after class of important things that take hold of our fire academies. How many days of forcible entry training? How many days of fire attack training versus how many days of hazmat? I'm taking a hazardous materials class right now that I have to take. Woof. It is death by PowerPoint. The instructor literally sitting there reading the PowerPoint word for word. JPR is checking the box. I have to go. It's 6 classes. I missed one last night, so now I have to go make it up. Right? But the thing is, the message is not powerful. The delivery is awful. And when we don't have the right people delivering the message, we fail. We turn people off. People become jaded. They walk away. It's frustrating. The system is frustrating. We all know that. Something that is very, very fun to watch is who is teaching our academies. Across the country, many of our fire instructors are guys waiting to get out. The last few years, waiting to get out. What value and excitement do they bring? They set the tempo and pace for the career of that volunteer or career fireman. They set the tempo and pace for their entire career. Who do we want in our training academies? We want the excitable. We want the knowledgeable. We want the people that will double down on those young kids, the men and women coming into our fire academies. We want excitement. We want people that bring the mission forward. We don't want people waiting to collect their check, or they've been there for 25 years and haven't been on a fire apparatus in 25 years. That exists all over the country. So I challenge this. If that's the case in training, what do we do with safety? I would love to see next year more people here, a wider range of people. We need young people to get into the safety aspect of this job. Just like we want young and excitable people to teach in our fire academies, to set the tempo and pace of the careers for those coming in to our wonderful profession, we need on the safety side young and excitable people that bring innovation, technology forward. I can't stress that enough. On the bottom here, we give our people everything they need. We put them through longer academies today. We give them every single class an opportunity to train. Do we let them use their craft? Do we let them work? Or do we hold them back? I can't stress to you today enough about how we are holding our people back today. We need to let our people work. We give them the training, the tools, the education, then let them use it. The permission-based fire service that we've become is starting to really challenge the backstep and kitchen table conversations where we're not letting our firefighters work. This is not a safety conversation. This is a matter of poor leadership, poor direction, poor bosses. We need to have confidence in the capabilities of our people. If our academies are dialed in and providing the correct amount of training, then why do we not let them use their tools? Let them run. Let them learn. Super important. When we do our job, typically things go right. There will be fires where people will get hurt. There will be fires where people are killed. East Franklin Township, Kevin Apuzio, many years ago. Everything went right at that fire, and yet that poor gentleman died in the line of duty. The floor collapsed as he was dragging a victim out, ended up in the basement. Everything can go right on the fire ground. We can do our due diligence, dial in, understand the conditions in which we operate, and things can still go wrong. But if we let our people work, provide the education, tools, and training they need to do their job and do it proficiently, things will be successful. Chief Lee alluded to it before. When we don't do our job, we get in trouble. We're starving for leadership today in the fire service. We're looking for strong, hardworking, experienced bosses, leaders, people that can let their people do work. See, the problem is, in leadership, if you don't have confidence in your own skills and abilities, you will never let somebody below you perform. You will hold them back because they will outshine you. The best boss you want is somebody that wants you to promote, wants you to be better, move ahead of them. For me, being at home, 30 years in the fire service and watching all these guys come up through the firehouse with me, being a mentor, tutoring them, and then watching them fall in love with the fire service, fall in love with the process, and then they go on to make it their life. That, to me, is what's important. It's not about me, it's about them. It's about promoting them, giving them the tools to want to do something bigger and better. That's leadership. That's how we promote. That's how we push this job forward. We need more of that. But soft leadership creates a bad environment. A bad environment will create a tremendous amount of safety issues for all of us. For all of us. If you know your job, you know where to be, you know your position, your tools, how to act, how to respond, how to perform. If that window's a vent window and we can get around the opposite side and make that grab, throw that ladder, we gave you the tools and the ability to make and understand those decisions. Initiative. We gave you those tools. Let your people work. What's the priority? The title of this is Safety's Today's Dirty Word. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But what's our priority? Is our priority these days still firefighting, or is it all the minutia of the job? Do we start to focus elsewhere? Look at the shoes. Is our focus somewhere else other than the core mission of firemanship? Ask yourself that. I think some departments have kind of strayed. How do we get and how do we buy in and get our people to buy in to programs and initiative? Safety should be a part of our everyday. Period. Chief Lieb's talking about shirts. What shirt to wear, polyester or cotton? That conversation is a kitchen table conversation. That's one that I haven't thought of until sitting in the crowd today. That's one of those things that when you have a culture of firemanship, you have a culture of promoting the job, where we sit and talk about sharpening tools and positioning and leverage and bettering ourselves as firefighters and human beings, that conversation just filters in, and everybody takes that nugget away. That's a way to teach and educate without teaching and educating. Is that how we're implementing safety initiatives? Is that how we're creating an environment within our fire departments where we can teach and educate safety initiatives and ideas that we have to better our position? Is it normal conversation or is it a struggle? If it's a struggle, it's because your culture does not allow for it. There is a pushback. Safety initiatives are easy to implement. I say that with a grain of salt, understand, right? But safety, the simple things, a culture of seatbelts, washing your gear, understanding off-gassing of your equipment, simple things that should be everyday understood things are battles in some fire departments across the country. Why? It's because their culture has not adopted it. It's because they don't have a culture of firemanship. When we let our people do their job, what do they want to do? Their job. You let them work. You give them the tools to understand what's expected of them. And when we know what the expectation is, we're allowed to perform and do our job. All those other things come with it. Safety inherently is built in when we have the right culture of firemanship. We cannot let safety, the safety culture, take over the firemanship culture. To piggyback on what I just said, to reiterate, safety becomes part of the firemanship culture. They need to coexist hand in hand. It should be a harmonious relationship. It just makes sense. 2 sets of gear, off-gassing, all those things I talked about. Those are the littlest things. We had a fire the other night. We came back. What's exciting is when you have a culture of firemanship, the young kids in my firehouse are already in the decon sink cleaning their masks. Hey, Jay, you want me to get your coat, take your liner out? We're going to throw them in the washer. The company, engine companies, we take as a company, we'll take our gear down and wash it. Literally up until a few years ago, my coat would hang outside. We'd hose it down with a hose, scrub it with a brush and some cleaner. It would hang on the rack, drip down on the floor, and then we go out on a run 3 hours later, and I'm putting the same coat back on. It has changed that quickly. And what's exciting about that is the young kids are driving the change. The young kids are the ones that are pushing for this type of environment because they've come to understand that that is the expectation. The younger generations are fun and excitable. I talk about, one of the slides coming up is Bridging the Gap, and I do a 3-hour program, a generational program talking about young and old. And it has to do with really the foundation of National Fire Radio and protecting the integrity of the job and bridging that gap in communication between the younger generations and the older generations. And when I look at the younger generation, this is a generation that needs to be told and understand what the expectations are. When I came up through the fire service, shut up, kids, sit in the corner, you'll learn. But you know what? Back then, they taught us. Today, shut up, kid, go sit in the corner, that old school point of view, nobody's teaching them. Yeah. Nobody's getting to them. That's a problem. That's a problem. So if we paint the picture up front, if we tell them what the expectation is, we clean our gear here, we want you to go home, we want longevity, we share Mike's story about cancer. Mike Ciampo's a dear childhood friend of mine. I grew up with the Ciampo family. Watching him go through that struggle, what he and David Rhodes did at FDIC talking about cancer awareness, Chief Lieb's right. Mike's greatest accomplishment in the fire service of all his accolades and an amazing career will be how many people he's touched with his story about cancer. Super, super important. When you have a culture of firemanship, that is part of the narrative. That is the fabric. That's what pushes us forward. You want safety to be important in your departments. You want to lock into initiatives and bring forth opportunities to make us better. Include it into the fabric from which you're built upon. Thermal imaging, safety. I remember 30 years ago, I came into fire service, we got a toaster with a handle on it. The thing was, you couldn't even hold it upright, right? And they were giving them away if we would comply and start state reporting on a computer instead of pen and paper. That was the first exposure to thermal imaging. You look at it today, 30 years later, we still have departments that don't consider the thermal imaging camera as a primary piece of equipment for their first new company. They get left in the Charger. They get left in the truck. This goes back to that broad stroke. We talk about the fire service with a sweep of a large brush, a Bob Ross number 3 brush instead of the little fan brush that he uses. I'm a Bob Ross fan. That's how I check out. What I'm getting at is this. The fire service cannot be just one broad stroke. We need to understand how to deliver. We need to understand that what you take for granted in your zip code can be very different in another. I think that's what's really interesting about this group is because you all come here from Long Island, New York, to California, to Texas, to Canada. You all bring forth ideas and vision and implementation ideas that you've already hit on in your departments. What works, what doesn't work. Create a network where you share those ideas. Create a network where you can come together and say, we've tried that, it doesn't work, but we found this does. Take a review of who you are in your department. Does it promote the betterment of the job? Have we not lost focus? Do we still put the mission ahead of ourselves? our check boxes? Is the public still the main mission for why we're here? If our view has been skewed, if we have changed, you can bring it back around. You can bring it back around. I was talking about this before. People that truly believe in the firemanship culture. You look at some of the best firehouses in the country, they don't allow the slugs. The slugs don't make it in those firehouses. They don't make it in those companies because they're expected to uphold the tradition and values of that company, of that department. They don't want to be there when they don't have a voice. We can't let the slugs have a voice. We cannot give them a place to thrive. That will kill your culture. Places of true culture, we don't have slugs in them. We just don't. They don't exist. They fade away. We don't entertain. We don't allow them to flourish. But the one thing is this, we can't sacrifice it. Don't be apologetic. Love the fire service. Double down on it. Love your firemanship culture. And if you're not happy with the culture, change it. Get involved. Put the work in. Because truly it takes work. But my point is, we won't compromise because of noise. We just won't do it. Safety cannot remain a dirty word. And the reason why I say that is because in the kitchen or the front bumper, safety comes down and takes on a negative connotation. A lot of times, safety initiatives are pushed on our people. There's not any buy-in. There's not any lead-up. It's coming down from the top. Sometimes it has to happen that way. I understand. Other times, we have to sell it. There's this thing about the fire service, right? We all have those guys and girls in our companies that can do whatever we need, right? We got that guy. I got a guy. We need to go down and get extra pairs of gloves. We need to sweet talk the bursar about getting more equipment. We need to, we need a new this, new that. I know who to talk to. I need a guy to go down to the hardware store. I need a guy to go get dinner tonight. We all have the guy. We all have our skills. We all have our way about us. We are starting to miss that more and more in the fire service. We need the salesman. We need the talker, the implementer, the guy that can talk with the administration and command staff and then bring it back to the company level and sell it. But we also need that command staff and administration to listen to that guy too. So that guy can take those back bumper, those kitchen table talks, and take it up the line in an informal way and say, hey, listen, here's some of the concerns from the bottom. I really think we need to find common ground here. It's a two-way street. The buy-in comes from the top down, but also the bottom up. That's how you get buy-in. That's how we move initiatives. This firehouse is in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Ichabod Crane, right, the Headless Horseman. This firehouse garage door, 150-something years or more in age, and it still has a manual pull-down. That's how they open it on every run. They have not motorized that door. And the cables actually was in the middle of the firehouse on the apparatus floor. And so the guy would get up into their convertible, I think Seagrave at the time, years ago, and the driver, the chauffeur of the engine company, 100 years ago, would get in the driver's seat and he would pull the handle, and that's how the door opened, and the old guy would go out. They won't compromise on this. This is something that the young kid's job is to come in, grab the handle, and pull down, right? Door opens up, out goes the engine. We are an institution built on tradition. It is incredibly important that if you want a culture of firemanship, if you want your people to have buy-in, they need to understand the foundation from which they came. That is one of the most important aspects of the fire service, is knowing where you came from, because it's the only way you'll know how to move forward. Take the time and teach those blocks. Educate those kids coming through our firehouses. Educate the probie class. Do it whether at the academy level or when they come into the company. Teach, educate, promote. That is how we push this job forward. Do not sacrifice your traditions. Believe in firemanship. Believe that the fire service is built on the importance of mission and mission first. Put the fire service first, the people first. You'll never make the wrong decision. Balance, culture, we all want to be a part of it. Like this group, a harmonious, I had it in the slide before, a harmonious group between vendors, administration, firefighters, building community. You guys are on the right track when you talk about safety and initiatives and what we've been able to do and how we're pushing forward. Never has there been a time before where innovation and technology has taken hold of the fire service as quickly as it has. It's finding a balance between tradition and moving forward. That takes the salesman. That takes people that are dialed in to the mission to understand that we have to deliver it in a way in which we get buy-in. Safety initiatives do not work when there is resentment and pushback. So why bother going it that way? Find the road in which we can sell, find the road in which we can educate, and I truly find, as a kid that ran the family business for many, many years as a salesman, the best way to sell is not to sell. The best way to sell is to educate. It's just harder that way. Stop stomping your feet, stop pointing fingers, and start getting on the same level as those in which you're trying to protect. This group is here for the right reasons. The conversation before about I want to be able to do everything for everybody. Absolutely. Safety officers have that mission. Where we are today with the knowledge of health and wellness, mental health, physical health, on top of all the fireground duties and all the other things that you have to do, it's an unbelievable burden. The only people that are willing to do that job are people that are willing to put the time in because they have an unconditional passion for the people that they're serving for and the people they protect. That's what this group is. That's why this is a win. That's why next year there will be twice the size. You guys are building community. When you build community and you find a way to protect the traditions from where we came to modernizing the approach, we'll win. It starts with you guys. And with that, folks, it's our responsibility, like I said. I can't agree with this more. We all need to do our part. When I do my other program, the end slide says, do work, do better. We can always do better. Let's go get it. Fire service is worth fighting for. And with that, that's my information. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
National Fire Radio.